That's the thing where we have claims where, hey, they told the bartender that they ordered an Uber, and next thing you know, the Uber shows up. They're like, nah, never mind. They get in their car and they drive off, and guess what? The restaurant's held responsible.
They learn that all they have to do is see that the Uber's here, and then they go, okay, you've been released.
Yeah.
I've walked out.
This episode is brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, CEO and owner of Bar and Restaurant Insurance and Built Different Mastermind, David Delorenzo. My man, David, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am excited to be here in my own office.
Dude, psyched to be here. I was kidding when I got here. I'm totally spoiled. If you're watching the video, you might notice these aren't the usual mics I use. We have the studio. There were lights literally turned on waiting for me when I got here. All I had to do was plug my interface and my computer in and get my camera set up, and we're rocking and rolling, dude. So I wish it was always this easy, man.
Very hospitable of me.
Yeah, man, it was great, honestly. And you're here because I recently had John Bankwell on the show from Ling & Louis, and he is a fan of the podcast. And when I said that I was coming here, he reached out to me and he said, "Oh, you need to get these people on the show." And I knew John was doing all right. He was on my radar, but it's kind of weird. Like when you publish your podcast, you don't really think that like successful people are paying attention to you. You think you're helping people who need help, right? But it's really been a surprise to me how many people listen to my show who are doing really well. And I think like that's like the ultimate compliment. And when they say, well, dude, like I listened to your podcast for the past 6 years. I mean, it's helped so much. Like it's a big reason why we're doing well. It's like, seriously, like it's literally a dream come true. It's like, it's why I do the work. So diving in, like realizing more and more about how successful John was, getting him on the show, pulling back the layers. He was an amazing guest. He told me I had to talk to you. So that was literally 2 days ago.
That's awesome.
So here we are today. He had such amazing things to say about you and what you're doing here and how knowledgeable of a man you are. So I cannot wait to dive into who you are, how you got to where you are today, and what you're all about. But let's get that motivational, inspirational, ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so for me, it is there is no tomorrow. That was said by Apollo Creed, Rocky III.
Why does that resonate with you?
Why does that resonate with me? Well, a couple things. The past is the past, and the future is not, given to us. So I do my best to live in the present and to understand that it is my, let's just say, purpose and passion to do all that I can now in the moment and be in the moment and pay attention to the moment and enjoy the moment.
Have you read The Power of Now?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, dude. Yeah. Like, I tend to be hyper-focused on the books that I most recently read, and I over-quote them or over-reference them because it's top of mind. But I read that on my way out, or listened to that on my way out here.
Okay.
And it's just so powerful to realize that you literally have no control over the past or the future, and what you do now is literally the only thing that does dictate the future. So don't worry about what you can't do tomorrow or a year from now, and worry about what you can do in this moment to get you closer to that.
Yeah, I mean, you can worry about it. You certainly can. I mean, there's no right or wrong answers in a person's mindset or the way that they go about things. There's only the right or wrong answers for themselves. But the path that I have chosen to take is to be cognizant of where I'm at now and how I'm going to perform and to be in that moment. Now, by all means, I am not perfect. I have moments where there's dumpster fires I got to go put out, and even living in that moment, I start thinking about things that could go wrong in the future. So we're all human, but as I get older, and I just turned 50 this year,
it's a big milestone, man.
Yeah, it's you're halfway to 100, right?
That's
it's kind of crazy.
And it's crazy to think that more and more people are going to hit that 3-digit number.
Yeah, and so much changes with life and seasons of change. So 20s or 20s, 30s or 30s, 40s or 40s, and 50s so far are just like the best time of my life. So
it gives me something to look forward to.
Of course, yeah.
So let's start with the end in mind real quick. I really want to kind of share your story and talk about your evolution. I know that you're going to have tons of nuggets because you're a specialist with the restaurant and bar insurance, and just it seems like just a wellness coach and life coach in general.
Right.
But paint the picture of everything you got going on today. Let's start with the end in mind and then reverse engineer it from there.
Okay. So everything in a pyramid setting and with what I do is the main frame of what I have been doing for 30 years is bar and restaurantinsurance.com, which is a specialty niche brokerage for hospitality. So we write insurance policies for nightclubs, coffee shops, restaurants, you name it, anything that is community, hospitality driven, that sort of stuff. I primarily focus in Arizona, albeit I have clients in other states, but Arizona is my home. I was born here. I, grew up here, went to ASU, and didn't think I was going to necessarily do insurance, but I did. So that's one of them. I have a technology company called Sinatra. My partners are actually in the other room, who you had walked in and met real quick. And we're creating an application that is hospitality driven and a communicator with the insurance companies. We can get into that later. I have a mastermind. And the mastermind is called Built Different. It's with my partner, Jeremy Scott. He has been my trainer for 8 years. And him and I, one day working out, we're like, why don't we just kind of put this mastermind together? Because he has a podcast as well, which is amazing. And we just have a lot of, let's just say, earned wisdom is what I call it. And so we want to be able to share that with others. And we have a nice little group going there. I have a charity called 501c3 called Healing Hospitality. That is my give back to the hospitality community to provide health and wellness resources to those in as most of your listeners probably would agree with, a very rugged, let's just say, hard pathway of career as far as drugs, alcohol, all the things that come with running, owning, and being employed by a restaurant in the restaurant business, and then things that come, right, afterwards and all that. And I've been a part of that. I've also, so people know, I've owned 13 restaurants myself. And then I also just have a personal brand, which you can see back screen here, Delo. Everybody calls me Delo because my last name's Delorenzo, so I am the Delo. And with the personal brand is, some online coaching products that I have, and just helping people with, with mindset on how to create a niche in their lives, and how to help themselves with their aspect of health and wellness. And health and wellness is such a generic and let's just say overused term, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to people moving their body, eating, pretty correctly as much as they can, getting sleep, and really focusing on the physical and the mental to just take personal responsibility for your health and that aspect. And I'm very passionate about that. And, again, turning 50, that's my non-negotiable. Like every day I want to make sure that I am taking care of myself, because my body's not fully operating and I'm not doing the things to take care of. I can't take care of anybody else or do all the rest of the stuff that I just mentioned. It's a lot.
Man, you got a lot. So when you say 30 years in the industry, like when did you start the whole insurance thing, and when did you put the restaurants behind you? When did that switch happen?
It was all together. So I had started in insurance in high school, working for my dad's agency that I now own.
Okay.
And then I went to college. I got an internship with Warner Brother Records, so I was in the music business. That's a whole another story in itself. But to answer your question, while I was in the music business, my dad still had run this agency, and I pulled away from that for a little bit to do music things. And when I say music things, it was really cool. It was like back when there were radio stations, there were things called CDs. I got paid to promote CDs. Everybody from Alanis Morissette to The Prodigy to Aerosmith, Van Halen, Madonna. I worked all these records. And that was a very, let's just say, it was a dreamy state of life that it's part of my story today. And that was in my early 20s. And then the music industry just, it started to look different. It was a different landscape. It was not anything I was, interested in anymore. So I got back into insurance. Yeah, Napster, all that stuff. Got back into insurance. And
what year was that?
That was in 90. Actually, what year is it now? 24. Yeah, so I got back into insurance at about the year 2000.
2000, so about 24 years ago.
Yeah.
So grow up in the bar and restaurant insurance world, pivot to selling records and being in the music world with the Warner Brothers recording. 2000, you get back to selling restaurant and bar insurance. When do you open your first restaurants?
So when I was initially in insurance, I was just doing like paperwork. I was just learning the business. It was like a home and auto agency. They didn't really do commercial. Family business. When I got back into it in 2000, I didn't do bar restaurant insurance. I just sold insurance. I was selling, renters insurance and homeowners and junkyards and just stuff that was not, I had no passion towards it. It wasn't driving me, nuts. Right.
Right.
So then I met an individual, Julian Wright. Julian owns Pedal House out here, which is a brewery. He's owned several establishments over the years. And when I met him, we became instantaneously friends. He had opened up a place called The Library on Mill Avenue. And I got my first taste of actually writing insurance on an operation that was a little bit more hairy and had some premium and was fun. And I liked hanging out with Julian, and I started getting kind of the vibe of what a restaurant owner is. And, a lot of you men and women are, quite honestly, you're fun.
That's why I love the restaurant industry.
They're all good people.
The reason why I left aviation, aside from the fact that I wasn't a natural born pilot, to your point, it's like there was no desire. I did it because I thought the lifestyle was going to be appealing of travel and going to these places and having this level of freedom that was just like unprecedented. But that none of that was true. But it's the people. There's something about the people who work in restaurants that are the most like, take me as I am, and if you don't like that, then fine, unless you're a guest, and then I'll pretend that you know what I'm saying,
dude. 100%.
Yeah,
take me as I am,
right.
and that's who I am. So when I found my people, when most people hear insurance or they think insurance salesman, they think of the guy. I'll be sexist. They'll think of the guy in a suit, smells like cigarettes, and is there to give you a deal. I was never like that. I was wearing Rat T-shirts and Van Halen T-shirts to big insurance conventions, or even when I got called on to be the
news.
What'd
your dad think about that?
He loved it. Okay. Oh, because my dad was the guy that worked. My dad worked. He was a top salesman at Allstate before he opened up his brokerage.
Oh, nice.
And my dad was, semi-pro bodybuilder. He would wear sleeveless shirts to their big black tie outings with cutoff shorts. So I obviously gotten it from somewhere. Just be who you are. But he outsold everybody. He was the top salesperson for 13 years. Wow. And they hated it. They were mad.
Because they couldn't afford to get rid of him.
Yeah, they couldn't afford to get rid of him, but he would just show up and be like, "Yeah, that's how it is." Yeah. So I got a lot of that, and that's just who I am. It wasn't about disrespecting an industry, or look at golf now. Look at golf how it was back then, and look how it is now. It's hip, it's fun. You got these kids that are doing these things, right? So there's no reason why industries within itself can't be hip and fun and be attached to the personality of the person doing the job, as long as the person doing the job is really good at the job and they become the best. And honestly, I become the best in my field.
And I think it's interesting, around the early 2000s, mid 2000s, I think there was for like 50, 60 years, there was a swing towards corporate America. And then, like, what does it mean to be quote unquote professional? Yeah. Right. And it means to be very blah, in order to make sure you can get along with as many people as possible without offending anybody. And then I think during the mid 2000s, it was about who are you and be unapologetically you. And because now your market is the world, like with the internet, like you're going to find your people. So be the truest version of yourself. And then your reach is further than ever before. Yeah. So I think that was a trend that started to happen around this time, to be unapologetically yourself.
Correct. And now look at it, nobody gives a they just don't care. Right. And most of the stuff, if you think about it, a lot of stuff is done online. You don't even see half the people that you work with.
Which is interesting, because I think that I wonder if we're swinging back away from that now. Everything. You ever notice this pendulum? Do you disagree or agree with that idea of, like, do you think we went way too far away from, like, realizing how important it is to be with each other?
Well, obviously 2020 played a part in that. Right. I don't think you can ever swing quite as far as you did in 2020. Right. And so, yes, there's going to be a natural transgression of people wanting to come back to more of an even ground. But it also depends on the industry. Mm-hmm. Hospitality, albeit they tried to be as I don't know, online or, virtual but it's not what hospitality is about.
Right.
It's called being hospitable. It's called community. It's called people interacting with people.
Right.
That's why you go to restaurants or bars or nightclubs.
Right. Right. So back to your story. So you, at this point, you find the library restaurant with your friend Julian Wright at the Pedal House, or he
owns Pedal House now, which is a big brewery out here.
Got it.
Yeah.
But then it was the library, and this is the first time that you've been faced with this challenge of writing insurance for a restaurant.
Yeah.
So did you catch the bug? Is this when you said to yourself, this is what I want to do?
Well, so I wrote the risk. We became friends. We talked, and he was really the antithesis. That had him and a couple other people that gave me the idea to just focus on restaurants. He's like, or bars, anything hospitality. There's a lot of them out here. I was like, it's interesting. So I started trying to come up with names like, the bar insurance guy, or, I have like all these old logos of, when I was trying to figure out what to do. And I just ended up settling on barandrestaurantinsurance.com. Bought the website 20 years ago, and there you go. It's pretty easy to understand. If you ever decide
to get out of the insurance game, you have a good insurance plan.
Yeah.
Or like retirement plan is what I'm saying.
No, it's pretty cool. So I just I foot on the gas at that point. I didn't make any money. I sacrificed a lot. I lived with my parents. I drove a minivan. Women were not part of the picture at that time. And it took me a good 10 years to actually make any sort of a revenue that would get me on my own.
Do you know how good it feels to hear that? As somebody who's living and traveling around the country in a camper, and everything is going, I'm making money, but it's all just going to survival. And I keep on saying I'm going to be a 10-year overnight success. Yeah. And it sounds like I don't think people realize how much time and energy and just showing up it takes to get to that point where you start to reap the benefit of your hard work.
Yeah, I don't know if people want to realize more than what they want to realize. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't realize how hard it was when I was in the midst of it. I just realized that I loved doing what I did, and I didn't need to go buy an expensive BMW at the time and be cool and, pay for the $2,000 bottle service or do any of those things that you see a lot of these younger generational people do. I just didn't fall into that trap. I didn't really care.
Right.
I was just I love to work. I love to work. I love to win. I do like to make money, but I also understand that there's a sacrifice, because for me, it's not about how much money I have or what I got off of an account. It's about the exchange of energy. It's about knowing that you did a good job and you're going to get paid for it. And whether that's $10 or $10,000, it's just a good feeling.
Yeah.
I still get downloads on my personal brand for $100, a month for some sort of affiliate thing. And I get excited about it. It's just cool because, there was a little bit of work that went into it.
Yeah, for sure. So in 2000, you write your first risk. What do you call it? A first risk? Is that what it is? A risk?
Yeah. In insurance world, it's called everything has a risk pro forma. So you're looking at the risk for what it is.
Got it. And then at what point do you have a total of 13 restaurants? And not to get into any detail, but when did you reach that peak of 13 restaurants?
Probably my 10th or 15th year into the business.
So we'll say 2010 to 2015, in that ballpark.
Yeah, that's actually really good. And I just, I started making money, and so I utilized that money because I didn't have a lot of expenses. I didn't have a house. I didn't have a real fancy car. It was just me. I'd never been married. I don't have any kids.
Put it back into the business.
And part of putting it back into the business was investing in those that were doing insurance for me. And that allowed me to work in those restaurants. That allowed me to understand the restaurant business. That allowed me to have a seat at the table as an investor and, somebody that, got to talk to these men, because it was all dudes that I invested in their restaurants, and listen to the stories and understand how it worked and sit there and watch the daily operations.
So when you said you owned 13 restaurants, were these 13 of your restaurants that you were the sole proprietor of, or were they 13 investments?
So a couple of them were franchises that I spearheaded with a couple people, but the rest of them were silent, not so silent investments. Because when I say not so silent, because I was on premise working at some of these restaurants, or just understanding the financials and the numbers of how they operated.
So how many of them would you say were like ones that you spearheaded, and how many were just kind of like silent partners?
Most are silent partners. 2 of them I probably spearheaded.
Okay. And I didn't give you this warning because honestly, I didn't know we were going to get this much into restaurants.
Yeah.
Like I said, I rely a lot on word of mouth and trust, and I just trust the people who refer me to other people. And I had no idea at one point you had 13 restaurants under your belt. And also, was that even on your LinkedIn? I don't think I remember seeing that on LinkedIn.
I don't think I put that on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I didn't remember seeing that. So I'm going to give you the warning now while we're recording. I like to ask personal questions.
Cool.
I like to get into questions about relationships and about money.
Yeah,
I'm not doing it to be a jerk. I'm doing it because
I'm an open book.
Okay, cool. So I just want to make sure I get there. And if you said no, I don't want to talk about that, I probably would have edited this part out. But now that you guys have heard the consent, I would like to get into it. So getting it. So what was the first restaurant that you invested in?
What was it? That's a good question.
We're going back almost 20 years now. So
yeah, La Boca, maybe pizzeria. I might have had one before that, but yeah.
And up to this point, you're just running risk for restaurants.
No, it was whiskey in Albuquerque.
Whiskey in Albuquerque.
Yeah, and that lasted 6 months.
Okay.
$50,000 investment.
How many like restaurant real estate deals insurance deals did you do before buying stake in whiskey?
No clue.
Steak and whiskey sounds like the name of a restaurant. Where I was just trying to say like
whiskey,
invest in whiskey,
in the whiskey. Yeah, and it was in Albuquerque, but it was whiskey, WHISQUE.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a clever play in Albuquerque.
Cool.
It was an old like CVS drugstore. It was like a 10,000. It was beautiful. It was amazing, actually.
Okay, time to get into some lessons, because if it was so beautiful and amazing, why only 6 months?
Because it was Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
Know your territory,
What was going on in Albuquerque around this time?
Around that time? I don't know. But people were not coming to our restaurant. I know that much. I just think it was too... again, not an insult on Albuquerque. It just is what it is. I think it was too highfalutin for that sort of... We tried to create Scottsdale in Albuquerque. It just didn't work.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. What I'm curious about is... how deep into the world of restaurant insurance did you get before you had the extra income to invest in restaurants?
Probably about 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
So you were, at this point, really probably creating a name for yourself in the world of insurance, especially if you have enough cash to invest.
I mean, all the extra cash I had, I put into restaurants. So what's ironic is that Julian had asked me to invest in the library.
Okay.
And that was a $50,000 investment at the time, and I didn't have the money.
I was going to say, were you making good money in
No,
records?
I had nothing. And that, if I would have put 50 grand into it, probably would have paid me like 6 times my money.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Bummer. I didn't have the money then, huh?
Totally.
So, I mean, what are you learning during this time? I'm like, do we focus on restaurants or do we focus on the world of insurance? But like, why not both, right? So like, how are you evolving? I really like to focus on evolution, like evolving as a professional. So like, what are you learning that you can pay forward to our audience during this period in your life?
Yeah, I'm learning distraction. I'm learning how to understand the intricacies of a business and the romanticism of a business. So insurance is not sexy. Obviously, I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says, God, I just want to be an insurance agent. But when you go and you get into an industry that parlays into another that is sexy, then you find out. Then I tried to figure out a way to make the best use of it as an education. So all the money that I spent on building and operating and investing in restaurants, I determined that money was going to be like a college education, like a master's degree, right?
Okay.
Because I know, and look, I I'm sure most of the restaurateurs, listening here would understand that it is hard to make a profit in the restaurant business. I mean, your margins are basically nothing to maybe I can, do something, and then you got to scale, and then you got a whole bunch of other headaches. So I understood that, and I think the experience and the education, the master's degree I got into that helped me build my insurance agency because at the end of the day, I love business.
Right.
I don't care what it is.
It's funny you mentioned that because recently talking to John Kearns out of Oxford, Mississippi with the Grocery City Restaurant Group. I can't remember the full title of his restaurant group, but he was like, you got to figure out how to reach a broader market. And then I started thinking to myself, I was like, the people in the restaurant industry, I don't think the general public realizes how badass they are and how good of business people they are to be able to be successful in this industry. Yeah. That the lessons you learn in this industry, and I think Danny Meyer did a really good job having a business book, a broad, like he took the lessons from hospitality and made it a broader business book that was applicable to people in all verticals, right? And I was like, I think I need to start letting other people know, like learn how to be successful from restaurants,
right?
Because they're such badasses. What's going through your mind as I say that?
Well, they run on low margins. They're always dealing with unfixed cost. They have a very chaotic employment pool to pull from. So they're always hiring, firing. They're always getting basically stolen from, in one facet or the other. I mean, it's a tough business to run. If you can run a restaurant, you can pretty much do anything. Right. You're not just showing up like Rick in your office cubicle and, like something out of Office Space and, typing a few things on a computer and then taking a, 2-hour lunch and then coming back. You're hustling, you're working.
We have to interrupt today's episode to let you know that every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, Restaurant Systems Pro CEO Fred Langley is going live to teach you everything you need to know to run a profitable restaurant from soup to nuts. All you gotta do is click the link below.
So what were the biggest lessons you learned from being around restaurants, investing in restaurants that you leverage to scale your current business today?
I learned everything to leverage and scale my business. I learned how, from an insurance standpoint, what it was that created a good risk, okay? What created a bad risk, what constituted why insurance carriers did the rating on restaurants the way that they did them. So when you sit in a pizza parlor, it's a different exposure to the insurance carrier as opposed to a nightclub, as opposed to a white tablecloth, because you have different things going on, I learned a lot about liquor. I learned a lot about, the ovens, the way things cook, how fires could happen, how floods could happen, how patrons react to other patrons in different environments and different settings, depending on the entertainment, depending on the hours of operation, depending on the amount of alcohol served, the type of alcohol served, the location. Like, all of that stuff gave me the ability over time to, again, keep graduating year after year with a master's degree in restaurant operations to be a better insurance agent and to be a specialist.
That's really interesting. So you were looking at restaurants through the lens of an insurance broker to decide what level of security does this restaurant need depending on the level of risk they're taking.
Correct.
Which helped you understand when to see a good opportunity to invest in versus a bad opportunity to invest in.
Yes.
Okay. So give me examples of good risk versus bad risk.
It's really one of those things where a lot of it has to do with the owner. A lot of it has to do with the amount of time that they're able to train their employees, because a bad risk comes down to negligence at the end of the day. And if there's a multitude of negligent acts going on day after day, it's only going to take a matter of time, okay, until one of those negligent acts turns into what we in the insurance world call a claim. Once a claim happens, and if the claim, is determine that that restaurant or that establishment was negligent because they just are not trained, they don't care, somebody got hurt, something burnt down, it makes it a lot harder for that establishment to get insurance coverage at an affordable rate down the road. So I would go in and I would see just processes and procedures and, you know, a lot of things that happen with everything from the training of how not to overserve to how to handle food to how to clean a wet floor to how not to sexually harass somebody, you know, whether it be a patron or a, you know, another employee, you know, all of these things.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you started with owner, time to train, and then really bad risk comes down to equates to negligence is the big.
That's the biggest claim. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is one of the things that I've distilled behind every great operation is a great owner.
Right.
And it's a great person. Behind all great restaurants are great people. And really the secret to becoming a successful restaurant owner is to really working on yourself and having the discipline to do the hard things that aren't sexy,
right?
Like training your staff, like building systems, processes, procedures, protocols, and knowing what to do when the caca hits the fan.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff is what is discipline at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And, you know,
that's the real work.
Right. That's the hard stuff. So, in terms of starting with the first thing, owners, what were you looking for in an owner? So it sounds like when you were making investments, you were really looking at the character of the owner behind the restaurant. Well, I don't want to make assumptions, but...
Yeah, I was looking for the character of the owner. I was looking for a factor of trust. I was looking for organization within the owner's head to be like... Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you're handing somebody over tens of thousands of dollars to operate their restaurant correctly so that you can eventually make a dividend.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, the owner's persona and the way that they handled their affairs and also the way they interacted with others, i.e. employees, customers, all that sort of stuff, that was a huge difference. You know, there are situations where there are people out there that just don't care. They're just in it to turn and burn, make a buck, not necessarily follow the guidelines or the rules that are set out there that most people would follow. And, you know, that, and I see that in insurance all the time. I mean, I get it. People don't want to pay premium. They don't see the value at times with insurance until something happens. And they're like, oh my God, am I covered?
And I'm making a point to make a note right now. I do want to dive deep into like the most important elements of an insurance plan and why those things are worth money. I think that'd be a really great exercise today. But before I continue that train of thought, I just want to make sure I brought that to the surface.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to go into.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have, what is it? An avatar of all sorts of different owners. And I think that's true with any business. I think there's just an avatar of a human that actually cares and one that doesn't care,
right,
or one that has a goal to do this and another one that has a goal to do that. And so personality has a lot to do with it too. I mean, my investing came because I was friends with these people and I trusted them and I enjoyed being with them and it was exciting.
So in terms of today, I'm curious to bring it to present time. Where does the majority of your revenue come from? Is it through the insurance that the plans that you do? Is it through the technology platform, or is it through Built Different?
It's all through the insurance, and because of the insurance, it's allowed me to parlay into these other things. So the app has just started.
Got it. Yeah. So you're still heavy into writing insurance plans for restaurants. That's still your primary source. Yes. So through the lens that your modern day lens, right, in terms of the second bullet that we have here, time to train. When you're looking at a restaurant and you're writing a plan for them, what are the training programs? What are the technologies? Paint the picture of a training program, what that looks like when you're like, oh, these guys are going to get the best deal out there. Like, what does that look like? Paint what you're looking for.
Yeah. So this is going to be a shocking answer. The insurance carrier really doesn't care.
What do you mean? About what?
They don't care if their employees are really trained or not. Well, they ask the question, and do they care? Yes. But the insurance companies are out there to write premium. So you can say that you train or you do all this sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, most of them don't. There's no documented training program.
Okay, through the lens of somebody who's making an investment.
Yeah.
Same question.
I think people that make investments don't when I was younger and making investments, none of that really mattered to me. It was about I need a place to come hang out and look cool.
But as you evolved,
Yeah.
I mean, if you said the most important thing, the good risk versus bad risk, owner, time to train, and basically taking the time to do the hard stuff to make sure your employees are, not doing the bad stuff.
Right. Exactly.
But you don't have a picture of what that looked like.
Well, there's a lot of great restaurant groups, the bigger ones, that do amazing training and do stuff like that. And so as an older person now, because I have less time on my train and I don't want to just give my money away, that would be the type of place, if I was investing in restaurants, I would invest in.
Right.
It wouldn't be Bill down the road that is signing a lease on some burger joint and has zero experience and, he's using paychecks as, training manual. I just don't have an interest in that. I'm not saying that that's wrong and you can't make a living and give people good food and do things.
Yeah. Honestly, in full transparency, where I was going with this train of thought is that there are so many platforms emerging today that give owners a path of least resistance to build out these training programs to the point where you don't even have to create the material yourself because there's a library, an archive of the standard procedures that the most successful restaurants use. So the things that come to mind are like Wisetail, Opus, there's One Huddle. So all these different things that you can put into place where you're literally adopting a technology and then you don't have to build it from scratch.
Right.
And I think it's getting easier and easier and easier to do the hard thing.
It is. Unfortunately, I think a lot of these restaurateurs are getting murdered with tech.
You dive into that.
We walk into places and they've got like 40 apps.
Right.
And 40 things to pay for.
Why is that a trap?
40 things to log into. I don't think anybody has figured out the one solution yet.
Do you know of Restaurant Systems Pro?
Restaurant who?
Systems Pro. They're based right here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Restaurant 360
No,
or
Restaurant Systems Pro.
No, I never heard of them.
So they're about to launch their POS. They just finished doing the code for their general ledger. They have a KDS, and they started with basically being so it all started with Restaurant Systems. And I'm trying not to fanboy over this. They are a sponsor right now. I'll be fully transparent about that. But the more I learn about this company, the more I'm like, wow, like these guys are about to like. The industry is sleeping on Restaurant Systems Pro because when they pull in these technology pieces, it's going to be like literally a one-stop shop from labor management to general ledger to POS to inventory to costing, to like all these different, the most important things that you're supposed to do, all under one roof, under one bill. That'd be good. Yeah. So I think, I don't know, they're right here in Phoenix. So nice. But we talk about it all the time, the app trap. Like, and I personally believe that you're better off having one platform with one transaction that's fully integrated on the back end that is solid than trying to play the best in class game and keeping all that connected in the back end. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And if they've got that figured out, they'll win the race. Happy to make an introduction if you're interested. Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I got 500 clients out here in Arizona. I don't know if they've released that program yet or not, but if they have, it's like they got the hardware delivered. Nice. I don't know if I'm oversharing right now because I was in the office when it happened. So anyway, it's really interesting. I'm super stoked for them because they're a great group of people that really deserve great things to happen. I love it. Where are they in Phoenix? They're literally 15 minutes from here. Okay. Yeah, just I don't know what airport is northwest from here. Do you know the smaller airport? That's like they're like Scottsdale Airport's right there. Yeah. Not is it the Scottsdale area? The smaller airport? Yeah. So north from where our current location, it's northwest. Yeah. About 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Northwest. There's no airports north of here. Maybe direct due west. I don't know. Yeah. We can save the geography lesson for another day, but back to restaurants. So on your timeline, we're basically talking about how you started writing all these different insurance plans, and then you started being able to recognize a good investment, and you started, really. Let's go back to that time where we were. Continue your evolution as a restaurateur/insurance broker. Yeah. So
the more I got into the restaurant business per se, the more I got to meet other restaurateurs, the more they entrusted me because I was a restaurant owner that happened to own an insurance company. I acquired more business because there was that trust, I spoke their language, but I was also able to help them. And then, as I got more into the lifestyle, I fell victim to drinking too much and staying out late too much. And again, I had nothing to do the next day except maybe go to work. But I held it together the best that I could, and I still built a business while I was going through that. Now, fast forward from the time I turned 40 until now, which is 10 years, I haven't had a drink. And that was just personal decision because I had found other things in my life that completed that void at the time.
Did you have a dark, like a bottom that you hit, or is it just like a lifestyle change over time as you get older?
Yeah. A lot of people ask me that question, and I think they're always looking for, not that you are, but they're always looking for like oh my God, did you have to go to AA? That was none of that. I just was never meant to be, continuously going down that path. I'd always been athletic as a younger kid. I'd always enjoyed running, being athletic, doing all that sort of stuff. So in the time, in the moment, being in the lifestyle and doing all that sort of stuff, that's what was right for me. Right. I just got to a point where I got older and I just got tired and I was like, I'm done. And plus I got married and I was like, I didn't want to.
I'm kind of going through that phase now, so I can totally relate where it's like
a lot of restaurateurs, people that are in the industry, people that I podcast that own breweries are sober 6-7 years. It's at the end of the day, it's a business.
Right.
Right.
And just when you do it, so as somebody who goes to restaurants every day, a big part of that is like experiencing it. Like they want you to experience, they want you to take shots of the food. They want you to have the drinks. They want you to document it.
Yeah.
And then when you do that every day, and the same as a restaurant owner, you're tasting different wines, you're playing around with the bar program, you're having people come in, you want to be a good host. Well, part of being a good host is joining them, almost like it's like sharing the moment with them.
Yeah.
Right. So when you do that over and over and over again, you just get to the point where you're like, listen, like this is a special night for you, but this is every night for me.
Yeah.
You just can't sustain it.
No, you can't. And it all adds up.
Yeah.
And especially as you get older, you don't recover.
Right. Yeah. You feel a little bit worse the next day. That's for sure.
And the next day.
Right.
Yeah.
I know. So when was like the next shift for you in terms of like your evolution as a professional?
My evolution shift happened probably when I turned 40.
So coincidentally, when you started focusing from partying and drinking to, what were the other hobbies that you picked up that were really important to you?
Guitar. I continued to play guitar. That's like my form of meditation. I did run a lot. I quit running though. Too much inflammation on the body. I've always, like I said, I always loved to work out, but I would never get the results that I needed because I was too busy eating out all the time and drinking too much. So fitness, albeit had always been a hobby, it became more of a lifestyle and a non-negotiable for me because I wanted to feel good and energetic through the course of my day and be able to give what I can give to others. But yeah, 40, it wasn't just because of that, because I quit drinking or all that. 40, I think, was a good gauge and a good time in the starting of that decade to realize that I had gotten to where I needed to get to have confidence, to not have quite as much of what I call imposter syndrome, to understand that I had enough experience and knowledge in the market to be respected by the older people in the marketplace that called themselves hospitality specialists. Look, no bones about it. Like, I'm not the first guy that's like, I'm going to specialize in, bars and restaurants. There's a lot of older dudes out here that have done it and have sold their business and retired, and I'm now taking over, the places that are still in business that are theirs because they're not here anymore, or I'm just more aggressive. But I think, when you get to a certain age, if you've learned something and you become confident, not in a cocky way, but in a way that's respectful, and you surround yourselves with more and more people smarter than you in different areas, So I learned a lot about liquor licensing, liquor training. I sit on the board and the council for the Department of Liquor for an omnibus bill, which helps with liquor. I got myself involved in things that no other insurance broker would have the time nor make the time to do because they weren't self-focused on one industry.
Got it. So 40 years old is also around the time that you had this peak of the amount of restaurants that you had invested in. In 2015, did you just kind of like cut the cord and all that and the cash out? Like why lose? Because today do you still own restaurants?
No, I have one silent investment up in Flagstaff, Arizona. I've had that for like 10 years though.
Got it.
But yeah, they either went out of business. A lot of the restaurants I had went out of business, or prior to that they got bought out, and so I would get my buyout check.
Okay, you mentioned imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
which is something that I struggle with personally, as somebody who hosts a top-ranked restaurant business podcast, over 1,000 episodes. Has been talking to the most successful restaurateurs around the country for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
I just, at the end of the day, I'm like, why would you listen to me? Like I haven't done it.
Yeah.
Like I don't know and I also realize the more that I learn, the more I realize there's so much more to learn.
Yeah.
So it's just like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. And like it just gets more and more complex the deeper into it you get.
Right.
Do you feel the same way? You're saying right. So I'm assuming you can resonate with that.
Yeah. So imposter syndrome lives inside the minds of ourselves, and when we let it over control the fact that we don't really think that we are who we are, we value who we are, and we think that everybody else around us is thinking that we're idiots, right? That can really have an adverse effect, on you as a person. And so I never thought I was ever the smartest person in the room, but the fact of the matter is I would be in a room with a bunch of attorneys, liquor lobbyists, all sorts of stuff like that, but I was the only one that had an insurance background, and I would still feel less, even though that these respected men and women would come up to me for insurance advice. So I stopped having imposter syndrome once I started getting business from these people because they respected me and trusted me, and I wasn't squirrely or mousy or anything like that. And again, I would show up to these meetings in my Van Halen t-shirt and they'd be in suit and ties. I'm not going to sacrifice who I am or what I am just to look a certain way, but they respected that. They saw me as the rock and roll, insurance guy that would come in. But I did the research and I knew my stuff when asked, and I've helped get some pretty prominent laws out here, changed for the better of the establishments. We never stop learning. You're absolutely right. So knowledge is power, but it's how you utilize that power. And when you use it for good and you share that knowledge with others, I think that's where the real gift, comes from. And as you get older, you will also come into a place where I think you just take a deep breath and you're just like, this feels good. This feels good that I've learned all this and I can continue to share it. I mean, 1,000 episodes, that's a lot. That's an undertaking. That in itself makes you one of the top podcasters just out there in the nation. And you, because you're living in it and you're living in you, may not see it, but others, they see it. And when you sit across from very successful people, which I do and you do, a lot of times just being that, how do I say, sounding board for them helps them open up, and then they learn from you as well.
Yeah, and I think the other variable, to your point, when you're surrounding yourself with these lawyers and stuff, like when you surround yourself with the most successful restaurateurs, that's your reference point. Like this is my reference point. This is what I've acclimated to, and you get all these people who've accomplished so much, and you're like, I haven't even been a GM. Yeah. Like who the fuck am I?
Right.
Like
birds of a feather flock together.
Right. So I think it's weird because you are the average of those you surround yourself with. But when you are constantly at the bottom, I think because of relativity in your perspective of what you surround yourself to, you forget that there's people, like to your point, who are 22 years old and they just somehow ended up being the owner of a restaurant. It's because of who knows how the hell they pulled that off, but they are, and they're like, what the hell did I do? And like to those people, I'm sure I could be a great resource to.
Well, again, you have to, and when I say you, I mean me as well, believe that you have some sort of value and knowledge that you've gained over the years to be able to put out there that people are going to enjoy and love. And so when I talk about like my mastermind, I was hesitant to start a mastermind. I'm like, well, what do I know that I'm going to be able to teach people, right? I'm a 50-year-old man that sold insurance. Well, quite honestly, I didn't really sell insurance. I marketed myself really good. I'm a good marketing person. At the end of the day, our insurance company is a marketing agency. I don't sell. I don't sell. Even though I'm the only salesperson in the whole agency, and we're the largest hospitality broker in Arizona, I've never sold a thing in my life. I've marketed very well who we are and what we do and me as a person. So that's why when you look on social media and you see me personally doing the things that I do with my wife, my dogs, my restaurant clients, my friends, this and that, you're getting exactly who I am. It's not anything different. It's marketing. And if people like that and they're like, hey, this guy's pretty cool, I'm having a problem with my insurance, they're going to call me. I mean, that's just how it's worked out. And it's been great in that facet.
Do you think this is something I go back and forth on sometimes. I kind of almost get irritated sometimes when some people, so say if there's somebody who's the most talented restaurant experience creator, whether they're they have to put together this amazing team of like chefs and servers, and they're so hospitable. And when you're on their floor, like they are like giving the world to you, and they could show up and do that every day. But there might be somebody who's almost, or maybe not quite as good. If they're a 10, there's somebody else down the street or on the other side of town that's maybe like a 7 or a 6 that knows how to market the shit out of their business. And they're just as successful, if not more successful. Is there a balance there, or is there like some kind of like, is it almost like cheating? Like when, at what point can you just do the thing that you love to do and be content with that and not have to worry about promoting yourself? Am I just being a big baby?
No. I mean, really the short answer is all the time. You just be content with who you are and what you do. And if you're not into marketing, if you're not into all that other hoopla and all that stuff, that's fine. That's who you are.
Yeah.
And people that witness it and like it and come see it and want to be a part of it, they'll come get that experience. Because once you change the experience within yourself of what you're doing, and now you're doing other things that you don't want to do, guess what? You've changed the whole experience.
Right.
Because now you've got a chip on your shoulder about, shit, I got to do this stuff in order to keep up with this over here.
And I try not to be ignorant about it because I know marketing is important.
Yeah.
Like, you can't deny the importance of marketing. But I wonder sometimes if marketing is becoming so important that it's the most important thing. And if that's true, is that a problem?
Perception is basically what people see. So I always call it like, if you're not relevant, you're irrelevant. I think there's crafty ways to market within somebody's personality, the way that they want to do it and how they want to do it. And I know that we've all been over bombarded with Gary Vee and Vay or whatever, and all these big marketing, men and women, you got to do this. And yes, that's worked for them. It's worked for many other people, but you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You just have to live with the consequence of what you don't do and what you do.
Right. It's interesting because I've also spoken to restaurants like Ray Villeman comes to mind, probably the most successful restaurateur in the Lake Tahoe area. Doesn't spend a dime on marketing.
Yeah.
And it's because he's like, I put all that money back into my people, into making sure that when people come to our restaurants, they're having the best experience in the Tahoe area.
But that's marketing.
That is marketing because it's four walls marketing.
That's right.
Right. So like, I don't know. Me personally, I like the idea of doing the thing well and having that be enough to bring back business.
Yeah.
And it's tough. I feel like when you get people who kind of they duct tape something together and it's good enough, and then they become ninjas in the back end about just like, getting the latest and greatest, like, third party integration or something like that drives traffic, or they're just a wizard. Like they make, is social media as important as you're big on social media, right?
Yeah, huge on social media. Yeah. And social media influencers, I can speak for Arizona, are huge out here. Yeah. A lot of my friends are, foodie influencers that go to places. Restaurants? No.
Yeah.
No, but they go in and eat, and then they post it, and then all of a sudden there's a line out the door.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why I care, but like there's just something about it it just doesn't sit well with me. I can't get to the core of it.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, marketing a restaurant I know is really tough, and I think sometimes people just assume because you're a restaurant, people are just going to show up. I mean, do you remember the days of Groupon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, what did we find out about Groupon?
That people wanted deals, I guess.
Yeah, but also over time we realized that those aren't the people we want to invest in.
Well,
because
yeah.
they're loyal to Groupon, not our restaurant.
That's exactly it.
So it's just like, and sometimes I look at some of these influencers, and there are people who are adjacent to the restaurant industry who make millions off of the restaurant industry.
Yeah,
and it's just like, why isn't the restaurant a beneficiary of some, like they are responsible for, like think of all the adjacent industries, people who are doing so well,
right?
Because the industry exists. I think insurance is an example. Like, would your business exist if not for restaurants? You probably would have found a different vertical.
Well, yeah, but no, at the end of the day, my insurance would never exist without restaurants. And again, that's why I created a charity to give back to restaurants and to the health and wellness of it, because I understand that.
Right.
And
I'm not trying to single you out.
No. And those restaurateurs, those people that that know about it and come play in it, they love it. You know what I'm saying? But I also have a commoditized product that they all have to have.
Right.
You know,
it's true.
I'm not selling one form of cheese that you don't have to buy.
But my mind goes like third-party delivery, right? Where
Yeah.
Like if not for the restaurant industry, like this whole juggernaut of an industry that spurred up in the past 10 years wouldn't even have a platform to stand on. And like they're not even sharing the data with the restaurant.
No.
You know, it's just like,
And they're overcharging them.
Right. And it's just like, what
Yeah.
are we doing? And it's just like, why do we let these industries just walk all over us? Don't we know how much power we have? Like we are we are the linchpin. It hinges on us.
They are, but another thing that I found out about restaurateurs, not all, but a lot of them are so busy working in their restaurant.
Heads down. They have no clue what's happening to them.
They don't know what's happening to them. They don't have coalitions that are quite as strong and together, and they don't have the time.
Right.
They're trying to keep the doors open.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so hopeful for podcasts and restaurants, is because it's the one thing that they have the time to do. They can be listening to a podcast, prepping, listening to the podcast, doing anything. It's one of the one things you can do while doing other things.
Yes.
Which is so powerful.
Correct.
So anyway, I'm really enjoying the conversation, man. I'm going down those little rabbit holes. I want to come back to insurance because you are an expert in that subject. So in the subject of insurance, like, I don't know how you want to tackle this, how you want to approach this. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about, what you've learned about the world of restaurants in your time before we dive deep into insurance.
No, we can get into insurance. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So is there like a list you have, like a speech you're
I have an ebook.
Yeah. Okay. What's the ebook about?
Well, so I do speak on it. I do speak on the let's just say the lines of hospitality insurance, the types of risks that are associated with running an establishment and getting actual insurance coverage for those risks. So a risk example would be, if you have, people drinking, or if you have entertainment and people get in a fight or slip and falls, or, stuff like that. So I've written an ebook that's on the Bar and Restaurant website. It's a free downloadable book, but it goes into these, things that we can talk about now. And so when you look at, really like the key points of insurance, why do people get insurance? Well, number one, for the most part, and I'm going to speak in context to Arizona. I think this is true in a lot of states, but remember, all laws and all applicable sorts of things can be different depending on the state's laws and all that. So in Arizona, most people sign a lease, right? And most landlords want that establishment to have insurance because it protects them and it protects the establishment, right? Yeah. So in order for you to go open a restaurant, you have to go get insurance coverage in order to adhere to the lease. So that's number one. That's just like, you have to do that. Not just because you want to do it to protect your business if something were to go wrong, but you have to if you want to sign the lease and get into your space. So within those leases, you see a lot of stipulations, a lot of things that you have to, adhere to, you have to provide coverage for, and that's where it gets tricky because a lot of people don't read their leases. They just kind of, sign them and then basically like, I got to get coverage. And the next thing you know, their coverage is like 30% more because the lease is asking for, say, a higher umbrella, which is more coverage, more liquor coverage than the standard restaurant has to hold. Or they're asking for auto coverage and the restaurant doesn't even have an automobile, It's really important for a restaurateur before they sign a lease or go into something if they have an insurance agent that's able to read the insurance portion of the lease to read over that and look at what is being asked of them because they can give them a very good idea of what it'll cost before they get into bed with the landlord.
How much should an owner budget to do that, or is that free?
It should be free.
Okay.
I mean, we do it for free all the time, and we don't even have to get the deal.
Is there a difference between an insurance broker and an insurance agent?
Mm-hmm. Yes and no. So a brokerage is what we own, and that's where we go to market. So I have a handful of companies that specialize in hospitality, and quite frankly, I'm so experienced now that the companies come to me when they come to Arizona because they want a part of our business and our specialty, and we know what we're doing. An agent is like when you think of State Farm or Farmers or Allstate, kind of those big name companies that, again, market and advertise. Quite frankly, they don't know shit about hospitality insurance. They write home and auto. They have a license to sometimes write a sandwich shop or a place like this, but they may get, besides maybe a few brokers in the old days that did have a book of restaurants, they may get like a restaurant or two a year. And again, that's what I experience in my market. I don't know how it is in other markets if there's actually really good agent direct markets, but they only can access one market, and that's the market that they work for. And if it doesn't fall into that market, then they have to go to what's called like an excess market, which is generally more expensive.
When you're saying market, you're talking about the
insurance carrier.
Okay, got it. Not like the literal geographic market.
No, the insurance carrier. Yeah.
Got it. So lease equals insurance. Lease asks for a higher umbrella. So basically, these are the things that you covered. Like the lease might ask for more than what you need. So you really want to have a broker look at the lease agreement to really decipher what it is you truly need. Is that what I'm picking up?
Correct.
So what next?
So then you look at that, and then basically, there's things like, whether you're going to be under construction, for a certain amount of time. So there's a construction policy for 3 to 6 to 12 months if you're building out your restaurant. That's going to be a lot cheaper as opposed to if you're a restaurant going in and you're going to open right away because you don't need the coverages for a construction restaurant as opposed to what you need for a full service restaurant. Then eventually that construction policy turns into a full service restaurant policy, that sort of stuff.
Okay. So it's kind of like when you open a restaurant, you don't need all hands on deck. You can open it with 2 servers. Yeah. And as it gets busier, you can bring on more servers. So make sure your policy matches the stage you're at in terms of the evolution or the growth of your restaurant.
Yeah. And the big line items that you'll find in an insurance world for restaurants is going to be obviously workers' comp. That's if a worker gets, an employee gets injured. Those are 100% all the time auditable. That's one misconception that people have. And what I mean by that is if you open your restaurant and you say, I'm going to do $100,000 in payroll this year, and you end up doing $300,000 in payroll, you're going to owe premium on $200,000 in payroll. So that's, that's one thing that you just don't get around with workers' comp and paying premium. Because here's the deal. The more payroll you have, the more employees you have, the more exposure you have, the more ability for those employees to get hurt on the job. So the insurance company is going to come back and collect their premium.
Right. The more people working, the higher the probability someone's going to get hurt.
Correct. So if you're paying $1,000 for $100,000 in payroll, you're probably going to pay about $3,000 for $300,000 payroll. Just throwing simplistic numbers out there.
Got it. So you said at the end of the year, you're paying a premium. I want to make sure. I don't know if I fully observed that point about getting. Just hit me with that one more time. I'm not really. This is an area of weakness for me.
So you open up your restaurant and the agent goes, "Hey, how many employees are you gonna have?" I I'll have two. Okay.
Okay.
What's your payroll you think you're going to be for the year? 100,000.
Okay.
Cool. So they write the policy.
Got it.
It's $1,000. Then a year goes by. Hey, the insurance company from last year, which could be the same one for this year on renewal, could be a different one, but the insurance company from last year is asking for a payroll report because we want to know what you did from the date you opened a year later to the date that your policy renewed.
Got
So
it.
how much in payroll did you do? Oh, we did 300,000
Because I hired four.
because I hired 4 or 5 more people. Cool. You owe us another $2,000.
Okay.
Now,
Even if you didn't make a claim.
even if you didn't make a claim.
Okay.
Correct.
Even if you, so interesting.
Yeah, it's an exposure-based, sort of thing. Now, a lot of companies have implemented pay-as-you-go. So what that means is you open your restaurant in January, your payroll is $20,000 for the month. Again, we're just throwing round numbers out there.
Before you get into this, I want to make sure I fully understand. So 2 employees, 100,000, you triple in size, you're doing 300,000, 6 employees. I owe the insurance company on the 4 additional employees that I hired, meaning like I actually have to pay them how much money?
The earned premium, so on the extra 200,000.
Even if there's no claim.
Correct.
But what happens if I had made a claim with 6 employees a month before they
It'd be
checked
covered.
in? It'd be covered?
Yeah.
Okay, that's important.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. So now what they've done is they've offered pay as you go. So if you only do like 20,000 in January, the month that you start the policy, you would pay premium on that 20,000 in payroll only. February rolls around. Let's just say
Slow
you hired
season.
another person. Now you're doing 30,000 in payroll.
Right.
You would just pay your bill based on what the actual payroll for that month is.
What if it's, sorry, were you going to say
Yeah,
something
yeah.
else?
No, so it just makes it easier. So at the end of the year, there's no auditable money. You've paid what the actual exposure is.
Got it. So this would be like applicable in a seasonal, like
Yes.
like resort, like ski resort, where you're busy from November to April.
Right.
So you can basically, you don't need to pay for the whole year. And probably as the peak seasons come, you can probably even go month by month.
Yeah.
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 Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about workers' comp fully auditable. We're still talking about how it's still auditable?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm struggling with that word.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
It's a thorn in most restaurateurs' side, and I'm sure most listening to this are gonna be like, "Yeah, I can't stand work comp audits; they're the
Got it.
worst."
Yeah.
And they are, and they're
Yeah.
just not avoidable unless you do pay as you go. That's just how it
Got
is.
it. Any other key elements in terms of like things that restaurants just don't fully understand in terms of insurance and like what they miss?
Well, at the end of the day, there's several companies that write restaurants. They all rate differently. Again, you can be a restaurant and you can be open until 2 a.m., but you're not going to get as good of a rate as a restaurant that closes at 9 p.m. Just is what it is.
It's higher risk. As
Higher
people get
risk.
drunker. Yeah.
More people drinking. They're drinking later. You could be the last stop on the night of them drinking. So if they go out and they get in a car accident, and even if you just serve them that one drink, that last drink, you're still going to get pulled into a lawsuit because you had served them the drink that supposedly put them over the edge. And then at that point, it's all up to the attorneys and the insurance companies to fight it out on what the legal ramifications are going to be for the restaurant.
Got it. In terms of your ebook, things that you want to get out in this tear that you're going on, is there anything else before I start asking other questions?
No, I mean, it just really goes over the basics of the different types of coverage that are included in a normal insurance policy for restaurants.
Can you share that link with me? We can have it in the show notes.
Yeah, so it's BAR, BAR, and AND, and then the word restaurant, insurance, spelt out, .com.
Got it.
And then it'll pop
It's a
up.
pop-up.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So in terms of like situations where you see people saying, I don't need that on my insurance plan. I don't
Yeah.
need that element on my insurance plan. What are the most common things that you see restaurant owners opt out of that they really just shouldn't? Like, convince them why not to opt out of these, I don't know if you want to call it 3 or 4 things that you can think of.
Employment practices, sexual harassment, discrimination, hiring and firing practices. Those items are what's called employment practice insurance, otherwise known as EPLI. employment practice liability insurance. So, example, and there's all different forms of employment practices. We won't get in the weeds of that, but in a nutshell, what it means is that if you do not have coverage for that sort of thing, and Joe comes back and says that Sally sexually harassed him and is now suing the establishment for not putting in the correct practices or protocols for firing Sally or whatever it is, and they sue you and you don't have that coverage, you're on your own.
Do you know Juliet Gust by any chance? Ethics Suites?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Love Juliet.
Yeah.
She was a sponsor of the podcast.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. There are services.
She's been in this office.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She's great. I literally, sitting here talking to you, like when I first sat down, thinking of insurance and like all these protocols you can do, I was like, I got to reconnect with Juliet Gus while I'm out here. She's awesome. But there are services, the point where I'm going with this, like Ethics Suite is a protocol that you can adopt. It's free.
Yep.
Where it literally gives you a standard operating procedure to do the right thing. It's an anonymous place to basically report things. Like you basically need to have a standard operating procedure if there is sexual harassment or something wrong going on.
Yeah.
And like where I'm going with this is you can save just by having a protocol. You can save hugely on your insurance.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you know this. What's your understanding of Ethics Suites?
Well, I mean, that in particular, none. You know, at the end of the day, I've had a lot of employment practice attorneys talk about the subject. I've put them on my YouTube channel, like Connect and Protect, to just kind of give people the information to help them. But I'm like, nobody buys it, you know?
Nobody buys
that coverage. If they do, they don't feel like there's a value towards it. Like, oh, they'll handle it, or oh, that does. It's almost like they're feeling like they're
that won't happen.
Guilty of something. Yeah, you know. Oh, we don't do that here.
Do you know? Like, we're better than that.
Yeah.
Like, you hire the wrong person, and it could be even if it's the
manager sending a dick pic to the server.
Right.
It happens. I've had the claims.
You know, also, like, I don't want to like say it's ever okay to be inappropriate or whatever, but there's also, if you have a culture where everybody understands that like it's a loose culture, you can make jokes, people aren't offended easily, and it happens a lot in the restaurant industry where we have that culture where like where it can be a bunch of sailors, right? You get that one person that's maybe not a sailor,
right?
All it takes is one person that's not right for your culture fit to be like, I'm offended, or this wasn't right, or I felt, and then game over.
The social makeup of society is completely different,
right? And I feel like weird saying that, but I've seen it happen, and I've seen situations where there was just somebody who wasn't a good culture fit. They weren't necessarily in danger, but they didn't feel comfortable in the situation, not understanding the social dynamics of this group that they just entered into.
Right.
And all it takes is one person that just doesn't understand it. And if they don't feel comfortable, it doesn't fucking matter what the culture is and the unwritten rules and understanding of your culture is. Like, they don't feel comfortable, game over.
Yeah. And the poor restaurateur is just like, they're like, I'm just trying to cook some food and get on people's plate. I can't babysit all these people.
Like, I've been in restaurants where women have credit cards swipe my butt cheeks. You know, like, like things happen in the restaurant industry. You get one person who's not comfortable with that. And I'm not saying that behavior is appropriate. I'm just saying one thing that's interesting about the restaurant industry is that people tend to be more loose, relaxed sailors.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. It's just it's a common thread. So all it takes is one person that might not be a good cultural fit for that, and it could totally like get you in a lot of trouble. So again, that's the employment practice insurance. What's it called?
EPLI.
Any other examples like that we should be aware of?
Well, I mean, nobody buys cyber. A cyber to me is probably, I don't want to call it a waste of money, but it's not anything that I don't see a lot of claims on. And when I say cyber, it's like people, credit card information getting stolen, personal, data, email hacking, ransomware, things like that.
Okay. So you're saying that's something that you shouldn't worry about?
No, I mean, you should always worry about it in this day and age. I'm just saying that most restaurateurs don't give a crap about that coverage either.
But you should.
Well, I'm an insurance salesman. I'm going to sell you everything. Yeah, you should worry about it. But from my frame of reference, knock on wood, I don't even see one cyber claim a year.
Okay.
Now, if it does happen, it's going to be pretty nasty.
Okay.
But yeah, for whatever reason, people aren't getting at least to my knowledge, as hacked in as they used to be. So, there might be cyber coverage that's maybe added into a person's actual like bulk policy where they may get like $100,000 in coverage, but nobody's going out and buying like $5 million cyber policies because they're worried about, somebody out in Afghanistan hacking through and taking their money out of their bank account.
Are there any other examples of different policies or add-ons to a policy that you see restaurateurs turning like their nose to, that they really should not, take that chance?
They really need to look at the exclusions. Okay, so it's not necessarily they're looking at the policy as a whole. They're looking at the price, and they're going, well, why is this one $10,000 and this one's $15,000? Well, because the one for $15,000 doesn't have a weapons exclusion in it. Well, what does that mean? Well, that just means that if somebody gets stabbed, shot, or whatever on your premise, okay, that the one for $15,000 is going to cover you for that. The one for $10,000 won't. So you just got to look at the different exclusionary language that are kind of in, because most policies, they all cover the same thing. How much property you have? I got $100,000 in chairs, tables, kitchen equipment. Cool. That's going to be listed on the policy. That covers you for that. Liability is liability. Liquor usually covers them for liquor. Everything else is just kind of bells and whistles and throw in like spoilage, power outage, business income, things like that. Business income's a whole nother different monster, but it really comes down to, is the policy excluding things that might be relevant if a claim were to happen? And that relevancy could be the location that you're in. It could be the demographic that you're serving. It could be, the age of the building. It could be a number of things.
We have to interrupt today's episode to let you know that every second and fourth Thursday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, Restaurant Systems Pro CEO Fred Langley is going live to teach you everything you need to know to run a profitable restaurant from soup to nuts. All you got to do is click the link below.
Got it. One thing I'm curious about. So, during the pandemic, right, there was this like once in a lifetime.
I knew this was coming.
Right. Yeah. Like I'm curious where you fall on that. Like, are there new policies that let's be honest, as more and more people come into this world, and we're, moving more and more people, billions of people around the world, the likelihood of another global pandemic is only getting higher.
Yeah.
Right. And especially as, these different, whatever you call them, germs,
right? Yeah,
evolve
germs,
and get better. More. As they evolve, we have to evolve. But should our insurance policies be evolving?
So, yes, they should. But
viruses was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, here's the thing. Bacteria virus exclusion was existent many years prior to COVID. It's when SARS came out, and then they realized that if this were to spread like the way that COVID did and caused people to, basically have to make a claim on that sort of thing, it would have put the insurance industry out of business.
Right. And
not to sound like a dick, but unfortunately, if the insurance industry went down, everything goes down.
Right.
It's a lot bigger than the restaurant industry.
There's no insurance policy for the insurance company?
Well, there is, but it's so high up there on the financial juggernaut that it's one of those things that they wouldn't have enough money to pay out all the claims. Just wouldn't happen. So that's why they had, come up with the virus and exclusion, again, way prior to COVID. So the government, our amazing government that helps us all the time, that was really their job to come in and provide the services that they did. The PPP, this ERC stuff. A lot of restaurants, a lot of my clients, thank God. And I was in Arizona, so I didn't have quite the trouble that a lot of these other areas did. But even in Arizona, a lot of my men and women, they actually came out ahead.
Is it because the government didn't come down as hard in terms of restrictions?
Probably.
In Arizona?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. But it was also because the government actually created these programs that, rightfully so, restaurants should have had every ability to collect all of their, they were being told to shut down by the government,
Right.
Now, what is funny is during that time, I got phone calls on, riots. Riots are covered. If there's a riot and your stuff gets blown up, there's actually, unless excluded, there is coverage for that in that sort of thing. But where people got very hung up on the virus thing was that they kept saying business income, business income, business income. What a lot of people don't understand is that business income is an actual physical loss to a structure. So a virus is an imaginary thing anyways. You can't really see it. Like you and I could be sitting here with a virus right now.
But it's still a physical entity that exists. And with a microscope you can see
but it doesn't destroy. You have to have actual damage to the physical structure. So business income would come into play if there was a kitchen fire and you can't open. You've damaged the physical structure. You can't get in. That sort of thing. Again, riots are different. If somebody came in and threw a cocktail, Molotov cocktail, and you're shut down because of the riots, yeah, it'd be covered under business income.
What if people were coming through your town and murdering your clients?
Yeah.
Because how is that different from a virus murdering your clients?
Because it's like assault.
Okay. But so a virus can't assault people?
No.
Okay. I don't know. I'm stretching.
Yeah.
I'm just having fun now.
I mean, maybe it can, but it ain't covered.
Right. So, anything else you want to talk about in terms of insurance, in terms of things my listeners should know that you just don't think is common enough knowledge?
Yeah. Look, I am a hospitality person first and foremost. That being said, I'm very knowledgeable in the world of insurance. I've provided coverage for thousands upon thousands of people. I've had probably thousands of claims. I've seen a lot. I've seen some claims go really bad. I've seen really shitty insurance companies treat people really shitty. I've had to get involved and help overturn a lot of that stuff. I've also seen a lot of good insurance companies provide and pay what was needed to be paid quickly and put the establishment and or the plaintiff, the person that got hurt, whole. Because again, not every claim is necessarily frivolous. There are places that overserve. There are people that die. There are people that, may walk into a place and they could be a minor. They could not be a minor. They could be sitting there. We could have videotape of them being served, 8 beers after already walking in noticeably intoxicated. And this establishment didn't have the nerve to, you know what I'm saying? So that's where the insurance came in and was like, you know what? We're screwed. We're going to give $1 million to the mom and the child's family that just got killed driving home at 9:30 at night, So that's where insurance does come in and does help and does, at least provide. You're not going to get your family back, but at least there's a monetary value to somebody acting negligent, and killing somebody.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of that. And unfortunately, I've had a lot of those death claims, a lot of them. It's a really sad situation. But we have gotten into an era and into a time in insurance where things are getting a little bit unaffordable. Insurance it's not cheap. It's not fun for these establishments to have to pay for and deal with, especially if you've never had a claim and you've never seen anything. And so I'm a huge advocate in doing whatever we need to do to change the laws so that the insurance doesn't have to be the backbone for every plaintiff attorney's Mercedes payment.
Right. And I think this is one thing in terms of the overarching narrative of Restaurant Unstoppable to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. I think transformation is a very dynamic term. Like it's transformation in a infinite what's the word infinite possibilities, right? There's in infinite directions we have to change and evolve. And one of these things it's tough is it's becoming harder and harder and harder for independent operators to absorb the costs of the ever increasingly more expensive the industry gets. Like you have cost of goods going up, labor going up. Now this is the other variable, insurance going up.
Yep.
And it's just like, how are we going to make it so independent restaurant owners, single unit operators to 1 to 5 unit operators, it's getting harder and harder for these people, small business owners, to to be relevant, because they just want to do the thing that they love. And unless you're scaling to 10 locations or more, it's getting harder.
Yeah.
So like, what are the laws that you did change? And like, how do other states and other, like, I don't know, the policies are probably different in different places, but like, what are the things we need to be aware of, and what has changed here that should be changing across the country?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. What is the job of a restaurant when it if they have, let me just ask you a broad question. What is a restaurant's job when dealing with a patron? What are they supposed to be doing?
So what is the relationship between restaurant and patron?
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, we're providing an experience.
Right.
And we're obviously, there's usually food being sold or beverage.
And beverage. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Simplest.
Right. So is it the restaurateur's responsibility to make sure that patron doesn't have too many drinks before they go off and do something else?
The answer is yes. It is their responsibility.
But what if so-and-so says that they're, getting an Uber?
Right.
Or they have a ride.
So you can't babysit them all the way to their car.
Ah, exactly.
Right. So once they leave the four walls, so there's that gray area.
Mm-hmm. And that's where most of the claims happen. Yeah. That's the misconception. That's the thing where we have claims where, hey, they told the bartender that they ordered an Uber, and next thing you know, the Uber shows up. They're like, nah, never mind. They get in their car and they drive off, and guess what? The restaurant's held responsible.
They learn that all they have to do is see that the Uber's here, and then they go, okay, you've been released.
Yeah.
I've walked out.
The point that I'm making is that there is zero personal responsibility on the patron.
Right.
And so if anything, I think people that go and frequent restaurants, bars, that sort of thing, they should really take a step back and be like, I'm going to put these people out of business based on my behavior.
Yeah.
You know
what's interesting? It always comes back back to this idea of like transforming the industry.
Yeah.
It's something that I push a lot, and like what I've distilled, like I think at the core of it, what needs to change is culture. There's a cultural issue, and there's a real problem with the consumer.
Yeah.
And it's like, one, they need to be educated on what it costs to run a restaurant and to stop abusing these people who are just trying to make a living. And I think that is a beautiful example that's never come up on the show of just abusing the restaurant, where they're just trying to provide a good time.
Yeah.
Like, at what point are you going to be an adult and take ownership of the decisions you're making?
Right. Why do you have a liquor license at the end of the day? You're there to serve a glass of wine or a beer and let people have a good time. Right. You're not there to give them a breathalyzer and understand whether Bill, who's 6'5", 250 pounds, is drunk or not after a pitcher of beer in an hour and a half. Or if he's got more to drink in his car, or if he's been to 2 other places and doesn't show signs of intoxication when he walks into your place, and he's fine, because everybody's different. So now you got to police these people that have zero personal responsibility.
Well, then on the other side, you might have somebody who has a really low tolerance of alcohol. Yeah. Maybe they weigh 90 pounds soaking wet, and they had a drink, and they're over the legal limit or whatever, if that's even possible. I don't even know. But like, then they get in an accident and it was like a fender bender, but like the restaurant's still liable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Arizona, that's how it is. I mean, people can get, sued if there's any sort of attachment during the course of the night to that establishment. Okay. Right. Now, the law out here states that the person has to be either a minor. So I don't see a lot of those cases. Like, most establishments are pretty good about, hey, let me see your ID, or if you look like you're 12, no. But the other Title IV, which is Arizona liquor law, so it's the name of this is where we get into a problem. It says that you cannot serve somebody that is showing signs of obvious intoxication. Okay, it's so broad.
Right.
You just like, huh?
They're friendly.
Right. Exactly. What are signs? Like, again, that could be anything. Right. So it really just doesn't,
And I feel like it's relative to the person. What if somebody's just clumsy?
Boom.
And
the thing is, nobody holds camera footage for longer than 2 weeks. Most of the claims that we get are over a year old or a year old, right? And the people that were even bartending or working aren't even there anymore to even give a statement if you can find them. So now you've got this big bad establishment that served, bill, 250 pounds, one drink, and the plaintiff attorney saying, well, you should have known that he was intoxicated. I mean, it's so ridiculous. But like in California, the only way that they can get in trouble is if you overserve a minor. Okay. Back to Arizona. Arizona, you can sue for however much you want to sue. Now, what ends up happening is they're like, oh, you have $1 million? Cool, we'll sue for the $1 million. Oh, wait, you have an umbrella too? We're going to sue for $2 million. We think the case is worth whatever coverage they end up having.
Right.
That's the game. But like in Colorado, there's what's called a cap on limits. So unfortunately for the family of the dead people, there's only so much that you can get out of the insurance company, and it's usually like 100 and something thousand or whatever. So the liquor laws are a lot more favorable to the establishment because they do put a little bit of responsibility on them with the liquor, but most of the responsibility on the patron.
Right. So is there? I mean, I feel like this is such a lost cause to even go here. So it sounds like there's a cultural issue with the consumer, but there's also seems to be a cultural issue with the law firms and the legal system going after the restaurants.
Yeah. When you leave here, just drive around and look at all the billboards.
Right.
They're not flower companies.
Right. So what's happening? How can we make an effort to change this broken legal system, or this I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Almost like predatory legal system.
I'm working on it.
So what laws have you changed that you can talk about? I mean, obviously, it's around the liquor issues, but
yeah, I mean, in Arizona, as most recent, we changed the liquor laws to get rid of what's called common law, and that was it gets really convoluted and probably boring for people to listen to. But at the end of the day, what it did is it created a basis for plaintiff attorneys to make it a little bit more difficult to sue an establishment without some sort of burden of proof that that the establishment was actually doing something negligent. Okay, so that's a big movement, but again, any law that you change can take a year or two to set another precedent and another, let's just say, way of the judges and the juries to understand how the laws now work compared to how they worked, 20 years ago. You got to set a precedence.
Got it. So if we're listening to this and we're not in Arizona,
yeah,
and our state, our city is behind the ball in terms of making the progress that you've made for Arizona, what's the starting point? What's the call to action to get the ball moving? How do we recreate what you've done for Arizona in our state?
In some states, you may not have to. Some state, like Nevada,
yeah,
there is no liquor. There's no dram shop.
Yeah.
You're on your own. You can go drink wherever you want and drive and get crazy, and the bar's not held responsible. Other states that I hear are really bad are like Texas. Florida's got some really stringent liquor laws. So at the end of the day, to answer your question, if you're a restaurateur and you're listening to this and you're like, or South Carolina's horrible, if you can't get your broker to get, in contact with your lobbyist about liquor liability, liquor law, then you need to. That's where it starts.
I just saw this reel the other day that Florida and Texas have the five most the five highest death rate highways in the country.
Yeah,
all five are in those two states.
Yeah,
which is kind of
ironic.
Yeah. What are the odds, right?
Yeah, there's some articles, I believe it, South Carolina, where, they've been fighting these laws, and, you'll get verdicts of like $40 million. It's insane. Yeah. And it's just like, what are we going to do?
Got it. So, there's tons of things we can talk about. I want to make sure we talk about, I'm really interested in your latest venture, trying to have the service as a software associated with the insurance that you're doing, Sinatra. Yeah, like Frank Sinatra. Got it. So anything before we get into like that next project that you want to drop on us before transitioning away from?
No, I think we talked about enough insurance. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
that's all you ever do.
Yeah.
So what is this new world that you're entering to, the technology integrating hospitality insurance?
Yeah, so Sinatra was an idea that my business partner, he at the time was 20, he's now a 21-year-old whiz kid. I had taken notes over the last 20 years of how to streamline processes, claims, audits, inspection recommendations, all that sort of stuff. And so it's all on paper. And I met this kid, probably going on a couple years now. And we ended up, kind of coordinating a company that has to do with insurance. And so a major insurance company has invested in us, and we're going to help. Basically what the app is going to do is going to streamline processes. So I'm an insurance broker, right? I have a establishment that I need to get information on, and I'm able to more fluidly get this information through the creation of this app. And then through this app, it's for free for all the hospitality people. Through the app, they're able to get a whole bunch of added benefits, documentation holding. We do have online training on there as well. That's very specific to the location. So if they want to put in all their own sort of, if it's a brewery, specific to what their brewery trains on, to their pre-shift list, all that, we download all that stuff in there for them.
So it sounds like a service that basically lets you create like an a la carte perfect insurance plan for you. So you don't need, so it's kind of like the software becomes the broker.
Correct. Yes. So what we're doing is creating a better broker in the basis of creating a better risk, because we're allowing them to do it all from their phone, send in all the stuff, streamline it, and then we will be getting into camera technology where we're going to be able to save data for about 5 years.
Okay.
So when and if something happens, we have that information now, which nobody has.
Wait, so camera technology meaning cameras in the restaurants?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to also be a surveillance camera company too on top of that, or are you going to integrate with other?
We'll integrate with all
like
their cameras
Solink and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Got it. So, so the software basically helps the restaurant or the bar owner. It guides them through the insurance purchasing process, and it also interfaces with other service as a software to basically back up the restaurant owner if anything goes wrong.
Correct.
Is there more to it that that was a very broad summary that I just.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it, but unfortunately at this time I can't talk about it because of just some outside investors. So we did our initial investment. I think we raised about 2.6. We've got some really cool funds from Silicon Valley that are into this right now. Like I said, a major insurance carrier has invested into us as well. We'll be going into all 10,000 of their clients. Here's the thing with new technology, and when you're building a new company, there's always pivots and always things that are really exciting, because when you lift over a rock and you see like there's gold under there, you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should be kind of doing this as well. So.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Distraction, shiny object, or gold syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of that.
So where is the app on the market today, or is it?
Yeah, it's on the iStore.
How many different users do you have?
I don't know. I don't get into all that. I just develop all the insurance stuff.
So when did you launch?
It's been active on the Apple Store for probably a year now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm tempted to learn more. I feel like we can go deeper on this to like kind of create more awareness on how it works. So you just go to the Apple app store, the App Store. You download the app. Like, take me through the user experience.
Yeah. So it's Digital Delo. He's your digital broker.
You're Delo for the record.
I'm Delo for the record. That was not my idea. Adam made me into the digital insurance broker. Look, at the end of the day, I saw where we're going. I had a meeting with Progressive today, Progressive, big insurance company, and they told me their plans to do even more online. I'm a broker that actually sells Progressive, but I see where this is all going. And hospitality is not going anywhere. And these men and women that are running these places, they need cheaper rates. They need more efficiency when it comes to buying a policy and having to do the things within the policy. So I'm just trying to create, not trying, I really feel that we have created something that when fully launched and the whole idea is together in the aspect of what we're building, it's going to be a game changer for not just the restaurant industry, but the insurance industry.
So it sounds like what Sinatra is your processes accumulated over 30 years, 20 years of doing this, built into a service as a software. Like how do you take your clients through this process, and how can we automate it with technology? Mm-hmm. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
What does the restaurant lose by going through a service as a software and not having a human there to really coach them through it?
Yeah, they that's the thing, is that we haven't even gotten to that point yet.
You don't know until you know.
You don't know until you know, but we're not looking to get rid of the human quite. We're just looking to put all the right humans, the ones nationwide, creating a council, the ones that really specialize in this sort of coverage.
Right. Well, that's another point. Insurance laws are different across the country.
Right.
So how scalable is this if there's different regulations in different states?
We adhere to the different states and the different regulations and create the outputs for each one. And then we will find a broker council of the really good brokers, because I know there's one or two, if not more, in every state out there. I mean, hospitality is huge. Right. So there are men and women that specialize in it, love the industry. And so our goal would be to find them and have them be the center point for the app if people want the human.
Got it. Any call to action regarding the app?
Not right now. No, I would just say hang tight and we'll, you'll be seeing it soon, like on a national scale.
Got it. Anything we haven't discussed before we wrap it up? Anything you were hoping we would talk about before we didn't get it out?
I do want to talk about, just real quick, and I think we touched on it. I think the basis and the importance of, as a younger generation, I have two kids, one's 20 and one's 22. So I understand like the younger generation coming up, albeit what we see on TikTok and all these other things, it's a little bit disheartening, but it's not necessarily 100% the norm, because I know that I feel good about the way I raised my kids. They're both graduating from college. They want to work. They want to get jobs. They want to be healthy. They want to do things. They want to have hobbies like go fishing or play music and do stuff like that. So, and I think that's the case with a lot of people with kids out there. I really do. But that's also the generation I'm also invested in CCAP and, when I say invested time-wise, and that's culinary, CCAP.
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, the acronym is always confusing to me. But anyways,
is it like the letter C?
C and then CAP.
CCAP.
Yeah, and so they do a lot for the culinary, for the kids that want to, grow up in the aspect of working in the, hospitality business.
Is it careers through culinary arts program?
Yeah. And it's really cool. And so it's nice to be able to speak at these things and watch these kids grow up and have an opportunity to do something that they're passionate about, because that's why they're there. And so the point that I'm making is that as this younger generation comes up, I think it's really important for people to be able to promote the benefits of, mental and physical, health and wellness, and not to get so inundated with, that, hey, when you get in the hospitality, the late night happy hours and the drinking too much and all that has to be the way. I really think there's a different way.
Well, there's a lower number between young people today than ever before that don't drink, that choose not to drink.
It's interesting.
There's definitely a trend happening. And I had the author of The Experience Economy on the show, and like his new thing, his prediction is he's saying we're going into the transformation economy. And it's really this idea, and I think restaurants are going to be at the forefront of the transformation economy, because it's going to be people, communities coming together where there's a culture of this type of person in a community sharing a space where they're going through the same transformation together. And I think that restaurants can serve as the foreground for that. And as we move into the future, looking at like Simon Sinek, start with why. Why does your business exist? Mm-hmm. What why can you leverage to speak to that group of people who's trying to go through a transformation? I think I like to use Jennifer DeRogers in Exeter, New Hampshire, who her mission is to live more vibrantly. And her restaurant is just an extension of her her lifestyle brand, where it's really just about like sharing her values of what does it mean to live vibrantly, exercising, moving, eating well, just mindful practices and all this stuff. And there's communities, people that go to a restaurant that's the values of this restaurant. And they want to be seen there because of the psychographics associated with it. So I think that, there's this, it's weird how everything, like this pendulum swung. Right? Like we were talking about before, where we were more connected and more disconnected at the same time than ever before. And I think we're really starting to realize the after effects, the causes of being so plugged into the digital world, that we're realizing as humans, we need the human interaction. We need the sense of growth as a person. And the best way to grow is with other people.
For sure.
That accountability. That's why masterminds are so powerful.
Yeah, and I think just have respect and love and caring for each other, and most importantly, care for yourself. Because if you feel good and you do all the things that give you that fulfillment, you can take care of all those around you. Right? Because you feel good if that's what you want to do. But the other thing too that I would love to see are these food purveyors and these other people actually providing good quality food at reasonable rates for restaurants, so that they can actually make a profit by serving good stuff to people. Yeah.
But I think all that, again, goes back to the consumer and conscious capitalism and educating the consumer on why they need to choose to put their monies into the local food and the purveyors and the farms, because it will, I think it's a supply and demand. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like we could talk circles around this.
Well, the problem I have is that I'm so laser focused on health and wellness. Like I can only go to like one place now, and that's just me. I'm like the 1% of the 1%. Nobody else gives a shit.
Right. But I think that's changing. I think there's more people who are going in your direction.
Yeah.
I think it's a trend for sure. So let me ask you a few final questions to wrap up that I ask all my guests. What's the thing about you, your business, a value, a process, a system that makes you truly unstoppable, whether it's your Sinatra platform or your bar and restaurant insurance platform? What makes you truly unstoppable?
It's my passion for people. It's my ability to want to be a good friend and create a good relationship and always give more than I take.
So the mission statement is to change the world through inspiring, empowering, and transforming the industry. And I think the way we're going to do that, transform and empower the industry, is by changing one person at a time. So how have you personally transformed? What's the example of your transformation that will help inspire and transform the world?
So over time, as I have gotten laser focused on creating a niche and creating a belief and creating a value for those around me, I think I've transformed myself in a way that I've become this advisor. I've become this
mentor,
this resource, this go-to that never denies anybody, help or any knowledge that I can give to them.
I love that. So this is the last question. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of you, your work, and your restaurants would be lost with your departure. Your service as a software company would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What would those pieces of wisdom be?
Always, okay, so family,
one.
Yeah, family, love your family.
Enough said, yeah.
Don't stress out on things that you can't control.
2.
And appreciate and respect your body and your mind.
3. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, David. So I like to wrap up every conversation by calling some folks out. And really, I want this to be the filter, the North Star of Restaurant Unstoppable. How do I know who to make an example of, right? Who am I to decide who we should make an example of? One of the whole reasons why I'm living in a camper, which is parked outside and driving around the country, so I can get into these communities and talk to people like you who know the market, who know who's doing it right, who's taking care of their employees, who's profitable, who's providing opportunity for growth, who's really challenging the status quo. As I'm saying these things, what are the minds? Who are the minds of the people that come into your head? You know, who should I get on the show?
Yeah.
Call them out.
Yeah. Chula Seafood. Mandy and Hogan over there are absolutely amazing.
Got it.
So they're definitely one. Tim Vasquez, who owns Some Burrows.
Okay.
When you just talk about the things and the passion he has for his family business and I think he's got like 1,000 employees now and 18 restaurants. I mean, he's just,
wow.
Yeah. And, you know, I would also contact John over at Wilderness Brewing. He's got a great message. He's built a local brewery concept based on the idea of localism and using local, you know, landscapes and ingredients and just holistic approach to. He's just an amazing guy.
Chula Seafood, Mandy and Hogan. Look out. Tim, say his last name for me. Vasquez with Burrows.
It's Some Burrows.
Some Burrows. And John
Buford.
Thank you.
Wilderness Brewing.
Look out, folks. I'm coming after you. I'd love to get you on the show. And how can we connect with you if we want to follow up with anything that you mentioned, or maybe we want to learn more about your software? What's the best way?
Yeah, so IamTheDelo.com. That's my personal website. Bar and restaurant insurance.com. Cool. I'm all over Instagram. I mean, LinkedIn, all that sort of stuff. I do have a podcast called On the Delo, and it's just great entrepreneur stories. And it's a half-hour pop here or there. And then as far as the tech company, I would just say that's it. It's common. Sinatra. The word like Frank Sinatra.ai is the website for it, but you can kind of check it out and peruse. But yeah, other than that, I'm excited to see where that goes.
It's fun. And this is episode 1087. So if you can't remember all that information, just look up 1087 and we'll have a summary and links to anything that you just mentioned right there in the show notes on iTunes or Spotify. And this is where I say thank you so much, David, man. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without people like you getting so vulnerable and opening up. There is no questioning. You are unstoppable.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers.